You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe, and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Trick or treat, Lone Star Radio listeners. This is Dick, the general manager, taking this quick moment to remind you that Lone Star Community Radio is looking to fill some of our talk show slots along with some of our DJ slots. We have a new show airing on the 10th, Making Connections with Stacey Harris, which will air every second Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Make sure to check it out along with our other programs on Lone Star Community Radio. For more information on Lone Star Community Radio, visit us online at irlonestar.com. And again, if you're interested in doing something with us, call the station, 936-647-3776. Thanks for checking out this recording, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Well, welcome to the Good News Show with Ted Cox today. We are broadcasting out of Conroe. We're on FM 104.5, and 106.1. We're also streaming on irlonestar.com. We have a really good show today. We've got a couple of guests that I think are going to really uplift and inspire you. We've got a Marine who has got a really interesting project that we'll be talking about with a new memorial. We also have, in our second hour, a gentleman who lives just south of where we're broadcasting, maybe 5 minutes or so. And he's going to tell us, along with a couple of his neighbors, some really uplifting and inspiring stories about what went on during the course of Harvey. And interestingly, not just the recovery just after, but the recovery that's still ongoing. But as I was driving here, I must admit that today I feel quite a bit fatigued. Is probably the best way that I can describe it. When we first started to conceive of the show, as we started thinking about what's the show going to be about, one of the sort of premise that we went with was that we are just simply bombarded with negative news throughout most of the day and most of the week. And if any of you watch our own social media or different formats that we get our news from today, or some of the late night comedy shows, or many of the networks, the news networks, it just seems like the last couple of years we have just been at each other's throats. But I was trying to figure out why this morning did I feel just sort of tired, and not just a physical tired, but just almost a completely being worn out. And if many of you think back over the last 60 days, and of course we're broadcasting out of the greater Houston area, just north of Houston, maybe 45 to 50 minutes due north of the city, we have over the last 60 days been really bombarded, to use the same word again. In the greater Houston area, of course, we endured, not quite 60 days ago, we endured Harvey. It came across and came on shore south of the Houston area, but caused a great deal of damage with the winds and the storm surge, and then just parked itself over Houston. And if you're in the greater Houston area listening, or north of Houston in our normal broadcast, or even outside of it, you recall all of the images that were going on, all of the struggles of life-saving efforts that were going on, and the floods that were going on. Seemingly right on the heels of that, the Caribbean and then the peninsula of Florida was hit with Irma. And of course, that caused a great deal of damage, again, with both the wind and the storm surge. And it seemed like right after that was Maria in the Caribbean. And most recently, over the last week or so, we're seeing all the devastation of the port of Puerto Rico. And in that same time frame, we've had wildfires in California. We've been threatened by North Korea. We've had the threat of Iran and ISIS continuing to hover over us. And this is on the heels of really a 2-year knockdown, drag-out political campaign. And I was just thinking, wow, we have really endured quite a bit over the last couple of years, and significant significant damage and significant testing of ourselves, of our sort of spiritual natures, of our physical natures, of our financial and governmental natures. And as many of you know, just over this past weekend, we had this horrific shooting in Las Vegas. And certainly over the last 2 days, in particular 3 days, as we're watching the news, it just seems like that the pile on of these catastrophes, both natural as well as international, and this horrific shooting where 58 people were murdered and almost 500 were wounding, it just felt like that this was a tremendous fatigue. It almost seems like that even in our places of escape, sports have been completely infiltrated with political gestures. And as I was driving over, just before I come here to the studio to be with you all for a couple of hours, I teach high school students a worldviews class. And it's really interesting to watch these young high schoolers endure. Some of them, in one of my classes, 80% of the students were impacted by Harvey, even some of them up to the point where they've completely lost their homes. And they're looking out into the nation and they're wondering, what kind of world am I coming into? What kind of world will I go to college in? And we were really wondering about what is happening to us. We were talking about this event. We were talking about the media and wondering what's going on with this individual. It seems like the media's obsession is about what did this happen? What drove this individual to acquire so many arms, stockpile them, apparently stake out these particular locations, and then fire into the crowd. What kind of world will we grow up in was really the topic of today. And it almost seems like you have two real worldviews coming into conflict with one another. From a sort of general political point of view, we have means of solutions by either legislation or education or medication. But I think that there is probably something quite a bit more significant and deeper going on. I'm not so sure that political solutions are the answer. And again, these young high schoolers are beginning to wonder that as well. In the midst of this, however, in the midst of Harvey and Irma and Maria and the wildfires and this horrific shooting, we do have some real stories of heroism. We saw where a police officer was off duty, saved over 30 people in being able to transport them. We heard of a doctor treating 1,000 wounded patients in immediate triage in 1 hour. But in particular, what I wanted to tell you about and kind of share with you a story that no doubt many of you by now have known. And this really dovetails into what we'll be talking about over the next 45 minutes with another hero who probably shirks at that label as much as what I'm about to read to you. But it was, as it was reported on CNN, and I'm pulling this from CNN.com, was a security guard at the Mandalay Bay. His name was Jesus Campos. And as it's come now to report, he was completely unarmed. And as most heroes do, he rushed towards the shooting. And as it's been reported, and part of the premise of the show was not to look necessarily at all the carnage and all the destruction, whether it be natural or man-made, and look at it and go, woe is us. But I wanted to take just a few minutes and say, where are the bright spots? Where are these heroes who emerge out of this carnage? And one of this is Mr. Campos. No doubt many of you probably have heard the story already, but it's worth telling for just a minute or so. As you may know, again, he has come to find out he was completely unarmed. He went towards the door, and As been reported, some 200 rounds were fired into the hall, one of them striking his leg. He was wounded in the thigh. And despite that, he used his master key to rescue the immediate floor, the 32nd floor, as well as the one above and the one below. And ultimately, he had to be ordered to leave. No doubt, this action, because it's been reported now on a couple of different outlets, that this action is what caused, because of the surveillance within the hall, for the shooter to stop his shooting into the crowd and begin to turn the fire on this security guard and ultimately onto the police. And it saved countless lives, not only with getting the people out of the floor, out of the rooms on the floor in which this is happening, but also preventing even further shots to be taken into the crowd. And when he was asked, when he was labeled, you're a hero, he, like many of the heroes that we have talked to over the past couple of weeks, and we're going to talk to over the next couple of weeks, he basically said, I was just doing my job. So this hero who prevented countless deaths did not want to be called that, but he truly is a bright spot in an otherwise fatiguing set of circumstances. And so what we have in our first hour, just as we come out of the break, is we'll have for the next about 45 minutes, Jimmy Edwards, who is a retired Marine. He is the chairman of the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission. And we're going to talk to him. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his life and his service. We'll talk about the memorial itself and its intent and what it's going to be honored and when it opens and all the different ways that you can get involved in either coming and seeing the commissioning or opening or anything else that he may want to tell you about it. So again, if you're listening, I hope and I pray that even as you look out into all of what's going on with us seemingly at each other's throats, either from a political standpoint or racial standpoint or struggling over funds to fix certain things with regards to some of the natural disasters, or sitting around wondering, why did something like this Las Vegas happen? Let's take the next little more than an hour and a half and celebrate the people that are among us that looked into destruction and looked fear and danger into the face and reacted in many ways as we would hope to react in caring for our neighbors and protecting fellow Marines. We're going to break now. And as we come out of break, Jimmy Edwards will join us and he'll tell us all about the upcoming Memorial Commission. We'll talk to you right after the break.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app for your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That is Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1.
Well, welcome back to the Good News program. You're talking to Ted Cox, and I am here in the studio with Jimmy Edwards. We're broadcasting out of Conroe, and you can listen to us, or you are listening to us live on 104.5, 106.1. And as you get to wherever your destination is, if you want to continue to listen with us, you can stream live on irlonestar.com. So I'd like to make an introduction, and he will certainly introduce himself. But Jimmy Edwards is in the studio with us. And welcome, Jimmy. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Ted. Glad to be here. Ted, I'm a lifetime member. I see that. Lifetime resident of Montgomery County. I guess I'm a member also. And been here all of my life. I have begun a work along with several other members concerning the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Park.
Okay.
A little about my history. I'm a Conroe High School graduate in 1966.
Okay.
Went off to school, University of Maryland. Basically got a degree at Sammy State University after I came back from the Marine Corps. Joined the service when I was 20. I was in the United States Marine Corps. And my assignment was Vietnam. My MOS was 0311, which is basically a ground pounder, grunt, carried a weapon through the jungles of Vietnam. August 19th, 1969, I was wounded, and according to the telegram that my parents received, it said that I had been wounded, resulting in the traumatic field amputation of both legs. I was medevaced out to Da Nang Hospital, from there to Clark Air Force Base, from there to Guam, where I began rehab, from there into Edwards, and then into Northern California to Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland, California.
Okay.
I did my rehab there and walked on Christmas of 69. And shortly after that, I went back to school. And shortly after that, I decided that I wanted to play a role in politics in this county. So at a very young age, I announced for the legislature in a four-man race. I was still a senior at Sam Houston. I had Walker County in my district and ran and got elected, and I was to spend the next several years in the Texas House of Representatives. From there, I came back home and ran for county judge and got elected. After one term after that, I decided, as did the voters, that I wanted to be in the private sector and go to work and make a living, which I did.
Okay.
But I stayed active in politics across the state, in Austin, San Antonio, here in Conroe. And my wife and I lived on the coast for many years. And then we returned here.
Okay.
And have been here for the past 11 years.
Okay.
We live out in Cut and Shoot area.
Okay. It's a little bit of a drive to get here.
A little bit of a drive to get here, but I come in town all the time.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your service, as much, of course, as you want. And first of all, thank you for your service, but your service within Vietnam, and maybe for those of us who weren't there, but certainly have seen documentaries and all the things in terms of your return. How were you greeted as you returned?
I was one of the very fortunate Marines, or fortunate soldiers, to come home. I had corresponded a lot from Vietnam with friends and people that I grew up with here.
Okay.
When I stepped off the airplane, December the 22nd of 1969, the end of that runway were over 100 people from Conroe, Texas, that greeted me. There had been some issues over when I was out in California.
Okay.
But when I got home, and I had told everybody I wasn't coming home, that I wasn't going in the VA, I was going back to school.
Okay.
And I was walking home. I wasn't coming home in a wheelchair. And so everybody greeted me. So I was very fortunate with that. And I was received very well. Montgomery County, Conroe, Texas, took good care of me and my family when we came home.
Well, good. I mean, that's because, again, you see so many of the documentaries. I was a fairly young child at the time. Don't want to give away my age, but I'm a little younger than you are. And so a lot of the documentaries seems to have a lot of the protests seem to be the highlight of that era, that we seem to be trying to atone for that in the Gulf War, both Gulf Wars, as we greet and celebrate our veterans coming back. And it seems like that maybe why you perhaps are downplaying what happened in California, but you were not, you did not see that in Texas.
You saw some in Texas. You saw some across the country. You saw a lot across the country.
Okay.
About the stories about where soldiers ditched their uniforms, hid out, didn't come home because of the issues and because of the way they received. Yes, there were issues, but it wasn't so much local here, and it wasn't so much for me.
Yes.
And I basically had a job to do. I want to get about my life, and I wasn't getting into that particular issues. I will say that this country and the Americans across this country have really come forward in supporting their military now.
Right.
and it's really changed over the past many years.
Okay.
But we don't want to forget any of the veterans that served.
Right. And so, as you moved into to your schooling and your higher education, as you've already talked a little bit about, what were some of the things that you saw in the legislature? How did that military experience inform you and help you through some of the legislature battles, fights, those kind of things? How did that help you, or how did it hinder you, perhaps?
I wasn't necessarily so hindered. There were
Okay.
several members on the Texas House of Representatives in it on the floor that had served in Vietnam.
Okay.
While the war, you understand, the war was not over.
Still, right.
The war was going on in 75. So you had a group of Vietnam veterans while Vietnam was going on in the Texas legislature.
Okay.
But there were times in great political debate that at least in Vietnam, I knew who was shooting at me from where they were shooting at me. And on the floor of the House of Representatives, I got a little confused sometimes going, wait a minute, what is going on here today? And so it was...
So you saw enemies were hidden within the weeds there in the legislature as much as the enemies in the weeds of Vietnam, no doubt.
Now what's coming at me? And
Right.
So, or coming at us. I enjoy my sessions in the legislature. There was a lot of great group of men and women working. It was predominantly, of course, as you know, Democratic back in the 70s.
Right.
And so Tom DeLay, who went on to become majority leader and even speaker, sat 2 desks over from me. And I didn't even know he was a Republican until his second session of the legislature, and he just happened to mention it. So we all worked together. It wasn't the party identification.
Okay.
The legislature dealt with issues. You had conservative members and you had liberal members. That's how the battles issued down. It had nothing to do with party. And so sometimes I wish now that that's what was going on.
Right.
That that label. We're all first, if you want to talk about legislature, we're Texans and we're Americans, and we're there to do the job.
Right.
And we were very fortunate during those times. The economy was excellent. So that we had plenty of dollars.
And because it wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s when the downturn.
When the big turn hit.
Of course, I was from and growing up in South Carolina at the time. So we didn't experience the same downturn in the oil market and so forth that Texas did. Yeah. You have an interesting and unique position from which to sit back perhaps and watch what's going on in various places, not the least of which is Washington. What would be kind of your assessment of what's going on without perhaps naming your side, just your assessment about what's going on and how do you see us charting a course maybe out of this?
I don't follow these. Yes, I do in a way. I'm not involved in the D.C. politics so much as I am probably the legislative on the Texas legislature side. Okay. But D.C., if you're just asking my opinion.
Just opinion, just your...
Basically, I mean, just basically what everyone's got to do, and they cannot for some reason be able to do it, is join together and understand the issues and problems of this country.
Right.
A lot of people are putting party ahead. A lot of people are putting their own particular interests ahead. There are a lot of people that I think that are there that it's time to go. We need a fresh voice.
Okay.
We need younger voices.
Okay.
Both Republican and Democrat.
And do you see, I mean, you mentioned that the driving when you were in the legislature was a driving ideology. It was either a conservative ideology or a progressive or liberal ideology. But do you see the same thing at work today? And again, I'm asking kind of
I can't figure out the ideology of a lot of people in Washington, D.C. I don't know which direction they're coming from or where they're headed.
Okay.
And I tend to center on the issues that we've got here that I am working on. Okay. And that is about all the time that I've got to do. Okay.
Well, that certainly seems reasonable, but I certainly couldn't let you go and get your perspective as we, again, look out into the world and see us seemingly at each other's throats as Americans. to get your feedback and your opinion. And we are about to go into break. We'll have traffic and weather coming up here in just a few seconds. And on the other side of this, as Jimmy, as you alluded to, we want to talk all about what you have going on that's consuming so much of your time, and then how we, as a part of the Texans, as part of Houstonians, can be a part of that. So we'll talk to you on the other side of the break, and we'll be coming right back in a couple of minutes.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Welcome back to the Good News program with Ted Cox. Today in the studio, I have retired Marine Corps Jimmy Edwards in our studio here to talk to us about a memorial that's going to be going up. Actually, probably he'll tell you all the details about the movement. But you are listening on Conroe's on 104.5, 106.1. And you're also, as you get landed from wherever you're going to be in your car, you can also stream us on irlonestar.com. Jimmy, as we broke at the bottom of the hour for traffic and weather, you made mention that there is something that's been consuming a great deal of your time. Is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come in and chat with us. So tell us what's going on with the new memorial.
What we're working on, Ted, along with several other members of the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission. I'll give you a little history about what we're doing.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, there's no such thing as a retired Marine.
Okay, well
they never retire. They're always former Marines or Marines. Because once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I was reading off your card, so please excuse the inappropriate.
I'm just kind of
because you don't want to mess with a Marine.
Cutting them. So that's just one of the deals that Marines have.
Thank you.
So I'll give you a little history on what we're doing.
Yes, please.
Back in the early 70s, at the intersection of City Road right here, San Jacinto, and 105.
Okay.
There beside what is now the tax office, which was at the time, there was a small park built honoring the fallen soldiers of Montgomery County.
Oh, okay.
And it was built there under the auspices of several people from Conroe, along with the library board and volunteers and others. The park had some issues.
Okay.
One was accessibility and visibility, and ADA accessibility, et cetera.
Okay.
So in near 86, while I was county judge, we built a new memorial. It was a fountain, and the names of the fallen were there around the fountain.
Okay.
The fountain had some issues over time. It began to fall in disrepair, and it wasn't taken care of. Several years ago, when I returned back to Montgomery County to live here, I saw that the park had a lot of issues, and I began to talk to other people about it, about maybe moving it. The problem of it is where it is now. There is no visibility. There is no accessibility.
Okay.
And you have a real horrendous problem with parking. And so a lot of people said it was time. And probably in 86, when we redid the park, we should have moved it then. A lot of people said it's too small right now because it's not even quite a lot big. It is a big corner, but that as far as it goes.
Okay. So the refurbishment or the rebuilding happened on exactly the same spot or very, very close to it?
Right there at the same spot.
The same spot. Okay. And that's here in downtown Conroe. If you're listening outside of the Conroe area, not familiar, we're actually just broadcasting just across the street or very close to across the street on Main Street across from the courthouse. So it's in this general downtown area.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It's about just a block away.
Yeah.
And so I got to talking to people. So one day I decided to conduct a survey. And so I have a 3-wheel cart that I get around on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went around the square talking to different people. And I asked them, where's the Montgomery County War Memorial Park? And that's the name of it. And about 135 people I talked to, no one knew where it was.
Even though it's a block away.
Even
give
though
or take.
In fact, I asked people in the parking lot of the tax office where it is located.
Okay.
And they did not know where it was.
Okay.
So it's the visibility.
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do was to find people that would help me, and we began to form up the commission. Now, I want to say that park has been maintained, and that falls direct credit to Commissioner's Court and to especially Commissioner Mike Metter, Precinct 1.
Okay.
Mike and his crew, and he made sure that park was taken care of.
Now, is it maintained by volunteers or by the city?
No. It's maintained by the county.
Okay.
It's
Or by
county
county,
ground, county park.
Okay. All right.
And so, but Commissioner Metter made sure that park was taken care of.
Okay.
It lies right there beside City Hall and right there beside the back parking lot of the tax office, which has, as you well know, horrendous issues about parking anyway. And the court is well aware of that.
Okay.
But I have to give direct credit to that, to the Commissioner's Court. So we began to work on forming a commission. We began to work on how to do it and form a nonprofit and to go from there. And we decided that the best place to do was to move the park.
Okay.
And so we began talking to city officials, the mayor, Duke Coon, Mayor Pro Tem, and other council members. There was one thing we did not want to do, was to move this park out of Conroe because it is the county seat.
Okay.
The county seat, this park needed to be there. What I did was I crisscrossed this county. I talked to every American Legion, every VFW, and every military organization asking for their help and support, because without them to start it, then it wouldn't do me any good. And every one of them, every post, all came in very strong to support a new park. So we began from there.
And about how long ago did this effort
We started a little less than a year ago.
Just a year. Okay.
We have come a long way.
No doubt. 1 year.
So under the auspices of working with Commissioner Metter and Mayor Powell and Mayor Pro Tem Duke Coon, we began to look for a site. And we came to the conclusion for high visibility, for the place for it to be seen, was at the intersection of I-45 and 105 East.
Okay.
Where presently it is called the Conroe Water Park.
Okay.
Or it is called the Water Park, or it is called Water Retention Pond, or it's called whatever.
Okay.
There are two flags there. The city, that is state-owned property. The state of Texas owns it, but it's managed by the city of Conroe. So the commission members, we're now up to about 11, 12 members strong, began to visit with the city and the county and the state. So we needed some support and help. So I went to Representative Metcalf, Senator Brandon Creighton, and others. They carried a resolution asking or telling, basically, advising the state agencies to assist us, especially the Texas Department of Highways and Public Transportation, along with several other state agencies. It passed unanimously in the House, unanimously in the Senate, and signed by the governor of state of Texas, Governor Abbott. Okay. We took that resolution to the Highway Department here in Conroe and also in Houston. And they said, we will support it. Do not, avoid any issues about what those ponds are there. And the city of Conroe says, we're in. So they passed their resolution.
Okay.
The county passed their resolution to support, and we were off and about. So what are we doing is the question. The names of 166 fallen soldiers from World War I forward is in this memorial.
Okay.
And their names are going to be remembered. And that is what we're about. It's not only service, but it is remembrance.
Okay.
So we have designed a memorial and has somewhat of a Jeffersonian look. We're working on a master plan. The memorial will hold the names of the 166 fallen. We're also expanding the memorial in the names.
Okay.
What we're doing is if you were in the service and you ever lived in Montgomery County, or you live here now, your name, after an application fee and after an application is processed, your name will go in the memorial.
Okay.
We have right now approximately 56,000 soldiers from Montgomery County serving in the active duty or reserve. They would all be eligible. Anybody that served in the service will be eligible to place their name there.
Okay.
We will honor the fallen, and we will honor those that served in the military. Also, the following. If you live in Montgomery County, you live here now, or did live here in Montgomery County, and you have a relative that served in the service, even though he may have never seen Montgomery County, his name may, or her name may also go in the memorial.
Okay.
So there's 3 levels.
Okay.
And so people have asked, why have you expanded it? Because we want to honor those that served.
Okay.
And I've even talked to some veterans and said, wait a minute, I don't rate having my name or something. I said, listen, when you take the oath of service in the United States military and you become a member of this member of the military of the United States of America, you don't know where you're going or what you are going to do.
Right.
I knew men and women that served in the United States Coast Guard in the 60s, but they ended up in Vietnam. Everyone thinking they were going to maybe guard Galveston or something.
Right, right.
It did not work that way. I know men and women that were in the Navy that ended up in crucial situations where their lives were at risk in a situation, even though it was peacetime. You could take the USS Iowa that caught fire, and 47-something sailors were killed, and a huge battle over the fire and the issues to keep that ship from sinking.
Right.
You've seen the recent ships that have collision.
Right, yeah.
That has
recently
caused men and women.
Yeah.
So you don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
So the question is, when you take that oath, you will be part of this memorial. We're going to honor our veterans and continue to honor our veterans.
Very good.
And so the memorial will be there at that intersection. It is high visibility.
Okay.
And it will be, we're looking at a bridge across to it.
Okay.
We're looking at several issues of the construction of it. And we are looking forward to it. So we have commission members, we have volunteers, and that is what we're doing there.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we are going to go to a short break. You are listening to the Good News program, and again, you've just been listening over the last few minutes from Jimmy Edwards, a non-retared Marine, and all of the adventures he's had over the last year. It's just remarkable. I do want to come back and talk a little bit about the process of where, and then you've given us a great explanation about where you are, and then talk the remaining minutes as we get to the top of the hour on all of the people. Where do they come? How do they find you? How do they get their name on it, and so forth? So as we come back from break, we'll pick up the conversation. And again, we're talking to Jimmy Edwards here on the Good News program. We'll talk to you right after the break.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Hey, welcome back to the Good News program. You're listening here on Conroe's Own 104.5, 106.1, and you're streaming live as you get to your landing zone from your cars on irlonestar.com. For the past 30 or so minutes, we've been talking with Jimmy Edwards. He is the chairman of the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission, and has been talking about this amazing journey. The first part of it was his life's journey and injuries and coming back home and the pursuit of legislature and serving the people of Conroe and of Texas, not only in his military service, but then in his legislative service. And then more recently, over the last year, which has been absolutely remarkable, we were talking a little bit during the break. As I sit here and listen, it seems like that I can't imagine that a legislature can get through any legislative piece of material in less than a year. So it was remarkable. But as he rejoins us, he's still got quite a bit to talk about with regards to what's going on and what's left to be done. And as he has already described, a number of qualifiers for people who serve to get their name in remembrance into this memorial. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in the remaining 7 or 8 minutes that we have left. So Jimmy, go ahead. I know you've got a lot to talk about in terms of what's going on and the design.
Well, we're moving forward in the memorial. We have an engineering company that is working, an architecture company that is working with us. We have several that have volunteered.
Okay.
People are saying, we'll help, we'll assist. It starts everything from building material to engineering.
Right.
And, of course, a lot of it's going to have to be paid for, too. Mm. You have to understand about this memorial. We're honoring those that have served. We are honoring those that have fallen. But this is going to be an interactive, media-sensitive memorial.
Ah, okay.
You can go into the memorial and touch a screen, or you can go to an all-weather book, and you could look up the name of an individual. It could be like Jack R. Jones, line 1, section 2, panel 3.
Okay.
You can go to that.
Okay.
Or you can be sitting at home.
Oh.
And you can look it up. You can go to our website, mcvetmemorialpark.org.
Okay.
And you can look it up that way. Say, for instance, you have your grandfather, his name is in there. You can go in, you can make changes, you can add photographs, you can add pictures.
Okay.
So you could be in a 9th grade class in Sioux City, Iowa, and you could look up this memorial and see all of the historical data behind it.
Okay.
So we're going to be interactive, social-wise and media-wise.
Okay.
Second, we intend to go to the Department of Energy and ask for a grant to solar power this memorial. Oh. We can use the solar panels as cover over the parking area.
Okay.
And so we're looking at that.
Okay.
So it is not just an area you go in, look at a few names or a few statues and walk out the door. It's going to be a working, educational memorial.
Okay.
So these are some of the preambles we have.
Okay.
The memorial will be a sobering reminder of the sacrifices that just ordinary people have made in times of great conflict and deadly struggle.
Okay.
The memorial will collectively represent these sacrifices in fine examples of art and architecture.
Okay.
The memorial will be a place for gathering. It will be a place for, say, concerts, for an educational programs, because the memorial is designed somewhat with an amphitheater effect over the water. It will be a gathering place if you want to be married there or if you want to be buried. Everything that we can do will be, of course, the commission will monitor all activities in it.
Okay.
So these are some of the things that we're going to be doing. The grounds adjoining the memorial will make this basically a project of public artwork that expresses the emotions of war, relief, sorrow, or a celebration of victory.
Okay.
It is all comprehensive. Now, basically, we're looking at private donations, which are charitable donations and tax deductible. The Commissioner's Court of Montgomery County has stepped forward with county dollars. The city of Conroe has also pledged it.
Okay.
We are beginning a pilgrimage across this county to every city that is incorporated.
Okay. Okay.
From Magnolia to Splendora, from Willis to the Woodlands. We will be asking for resolutions of support and help. This is a county-wide effort.
Okay.
This is not a Conroe effort. This is a Montgomery County effort. We're looking for support because the residents and the soldiers of Montgomery County all will be in this single one memorial.
Okay.
And so the commission will be asking all support across the county, and that is very, very important.
Yes.
And we have to, what we're doing coming up November the 12th, which is Veterans Day weekend.
November 12th. Okay.
At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we are decommissioning the park. We have it inside. We do not know what the weather is, so we're going to have it at the First Baptist Church in Conroe, Texas, there on North Main.
Okay, First Baptist.
It is a military ceremony. Of course, people are invited. We'll have a little reception at first, and then there will be a decommissioning. The names of the fallen will be there, will be read, or we will have a basically a very impressive and outstanding ceremony.
Okay.
And so we have to do this first. We're treating the park as if it were a naval ship.
Okay.
In other words, we're just not going to go in there and start grabbing up names and plaques and flags and bushes and all of that and tear it down. That's not going to happen. We're going to do it the way it is.
Okay.
The officials that have helped us will be recognized. All those Gold Star families, Gold Star mothers, families that have names and relatives there.
Okay.
They will be also recognized. So we urge everybody to participate November the 12th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the First Baptist Church in Conroe, Texas.
Okay, and let's just give everyone the website again. And for those who are listening to the Good News Show here with Ted Cox, I will post a link on this to this on our Facebook page as well. But it's the website to get all of this information is www.mcvet memorial MEMORIAL park.org. mcvetmemorialpark.org. And is the upcoming, I assume that it is, I don't have it called up on my screen right now, but is the November the 12th event, is that on your website? Can they go?
It is getting on there now.
Okay,
yes.
fine. So shortly.
They can also see it. It's going to be in the newspapers, the local newspapers. It will be There'll be flyers that are going to be out about it. So we're advertising in as different ways as we can.
And by you saying this, the public is indeed both welcome and invited.
Absolutely,
this is not just the families of the. Okay,
right. Absolutely, we need the public there to see what we're doing and what we are about.
Okay, and again, that is for those of you who are listening. It'll be up on the website soon. I likewise on our Facebook page, the Good News Show Facebook page, will post the event. But it is November the 12th. It's at 4 p.m. It is here off of Main Street in Conroe, the First Baptist Church, and so the public is welcome to come and participate and view and. As Jimmy has said, this is an active participation, not just of the commission itself or the county, but all residents of Montgomery County. And again, this is 4 p.m., November the 12th at First Baptist, which is the decommissioning of the current memorial, the current park. So, Jimmy, well, I guess with just the last couple of minutes, you mentioned the fact that all that have served or are currently serving. The 56,000 potential active members in the Montgomery County
that
area
are serving now.
That are currently serving now.
You could have, say, for instance,
how would they go about getting their? What is the application process?
We're setting that application fee up now. The applications and the fee, because you have to have an honorable discharge.
Okay.
You're going to need your DD 214, which is your discharge forms. Or, for instance, you have a grandfather, say a great-great-grandfather, that served in World War I.
Okay.
And then all you've got are pictures and maybe some medals or pieces of paper or correspondence.
Okay.
The commission will review it.
Okay.
And then if it's accepted, then the name would go in the memorial. You could be a descendant, say a member of the DAR.
Okay.
Right now, and living in Montgomery County, your descendant may have never seen Texas, but you can prove that you had a relative in the American Revolution. And so you would file those information with the commission. The commission would review it and then approve it.
Okay.
It is be a very careful screening process. We cannot afford a Daffy Duck in the memorial.
Right.
In other words, it has to be done correctly, and it has to be done reverently, and whatever.
Okay.
That has to be done. You can have a member of your family that fought during the Texas Revolution.
Okay.
Say at the Battle of San Jacinto. And if you can prove that, say you're a member of the DRT,
Okay.
Daughters Republic of Texas, or you had your grandfather who was in World War II, or he was on the beaches of Normandy, or your father was in Vietnam,
Okay.
or you have an active duty relative now in Iraq or Afghanistan, or someone like, or some member like that, that will also be part of it.
Okay. Now, what is your expectation for the number of names that could potentially ultimately be
Don't know.
in the remembrance? Do you have an idea?
It
of
would
what
be
might?
into the thousands,
Okay.
but they will all be remembered.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's basically saying that you can be and be part of it. I was talking to one lady who said, if you track me to my heritage, I have 18 members that would be able to be in that memorial.
Okay.
We want to honor those veterans and all the veterans that have served, but you've got to be either connected or even indirectly connected to Montgomery County.
Okay.
And there's a residency proof. But we're not just, we have expanded the park.
Okay.
The 166 will be well remembered, and it will be a beautiful spot where their names will be.
Okay.
But then there will be other names. And also, as you approach the park, there'll be mentions of the sponsors
Okay.
and people that have helped us fund it and do it.
Well, that is fantastic. Well, as we end our time, we're going to go to the top of the hour break with weather and traffic. I just want to express my gratitude, and perhaps on behalf of all of the listeners, whether they're in broadcast in their cars or online, our deep gratitude, Jimmy, for not only your service, but the service as you continued in the legislature, and certainly now in remembering all who served in Montgomery County. It's from a warm and deep appreciative heart that you're here, and we really appreciate all that you've done and what you're doing now for the remembrance.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And so we're going to break at the top of the hour. We will talk to you on the other side of the break with some survivors from Harvey and get their stories about their recovery and their effort. You're listening to the Good News Show with Ted Cox. Talk to you in a couple of minutes.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app from your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That's Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. If you are on the computer, bookmark irlonestar.com as your internet radio station. A Lone Star Community Radio. Broadcasting 24/7 from the heart of downtown Conroe, Texas.
Welcome back to the Good News Show. You're listening on Conroe's own 104.5, 106.1. You can also stream live. We have an app you can download, and you can listen to it on your smartphones and tablets, or you can stream live on irlonestar.com. Last hour, we talked a little bit about kind of what was going on in the world and all the things that we have been facing here in Houston, specifically with Harvey. And of course, we can look out into the world and see other major hurricanes that have hit. And I just saw on my weather app right before I started driving in, there's another little disturbance down in the Gulf. It just seems like that we are fatigued quite a bit from all that's going on, not only weather related, but also what's happened out in Vegas. And our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to all of the survivors and those who are trying to comfort others and first responders. We talked in our first hour a little bit with Jimmy Edwards, who is a U.S. Marine. He correctly corrected me that once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. And so we really appreciate Jimmy and his service and his sacrifice. What most of you will see as you view the YouTube is that Jimmy was injured in war in Vietnam and lost both of his legs. And so he came back as his wonderful story told of serving his country not only in military action, but then in legislative action. And even now, he has been spearheading, along with his commission, his Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission, spearheading this effort, this wonderful effort and right effort to properly memorialize and remember all those who have served the military, regardless of timing and regardless of branch, all that have served in the military and their selfless sacrifice, and also their families. We have both Marines and Army in our family, and know that it's not just the Marines and Army and Navy and airmen who are sacrificing, but perhaps even more so their spouses and children. So we so appreciate and want to give our heartfelt thanks to all the veterans and all who are currently serving, as well as their families. And we would do well as a society, as a nation, to thank them whenever we get the opportunity, and not try to tear down perhaps these monuments that are a tribute to all that have served. So thank you, Jimmy, for joining us. Now we turn our attention to guests that we have in studio. We have Christine and Sierra in the studio. We're going to talk for a few minutes about Harvey. Not only Harvey, since it's getting a little bit more in our rearview mirror, there is still quite a bit to do, even in the sort of Montgomery, greater Montgomery, Harris County area, for people who are still recovering from this tremendous storm. So first of all, let me welcome Christine and Sierra. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us, Ted.
Yeah, you're welcome. So why don't you tell us, Christine, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And Sierra, once she gets finished, we'll go to you, and you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into all the Harvey work that's yet to be done.
Okay. I'm a stay-at-home mom from the Woodlands, and my daughter is special needs, and we have certainly required assistance from our community when she was going through her second kidney transplant. And so when Harvey hit, I felt like I had to repay our community for what they had done for us. So
Okay.
that's why I started volunteering.
Okay. And how's your daughter now?
She's doing better. Thank you.
Okay. Now, was was it a kidney transplant? You
Yes.
said. What was it going on during the time? Was that happening
No.
during the course of the actual storm hitting?
No.
Okay.
Thank goodness. No.
Okay.
That was a couple of years ago. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Great. Well, and Sierra, go ahead and tell us maybe a little bit about yourself. And
Well, I'm Sierra, and I am from Montgomery. I'm a single mom as well, and I'm one of Christine's friends. We kind of networked at the beginning of Harvey and realized that there were some hyper-local needs that needed to be assessed and tackled that other agencies weren't quite fitting the bill on.
Okay.
So we kind of grouped together, and as the needs changed, our goals changed. So we were able to roll with the punches in that aspect to get our local neighbors and friends what they really needed.
Okay. Okay. So now, how did you know each other before all of this got started, or did you meet?
I knew her mom. Her
Okay.
mom, and we had met on one occasion before we started spending every single day, 16 hours a day together.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty
Can
much
only
living
imagine.
at her house most of the time. Yeah.
So you talked about kind of rolling with the needs. So Harvey hits and then stays, and it seemed like
Right.
it was never going away. Now were both of you here during Ike, and then before that, Allison?
I was not.
So- okay.
I was
not.
here for Ike.
Okay, so Ike, you were, and I mentioned a couple of times I'm originally from South Carolina, so I lived through Hugo, which was in the late '80s, and it was just wiped clean. And I remember just as my wife and I were looking to move for her back. She's from Houston, and I was looking to move here. I was looking for a house, and Allison hit, and I thought, I've never seen rain like this, and it just stayed and stayed and stayed. Ike blew through, and it was sort of a typical hurricane. It just kind of blew through, and but then Harvey, and I can remember thinking, as I saw this sort of zigzag forecast. I thought, oh no, it's coming again. But so Harvey came and decided to stay for quite a while. We saw most of the images were in Port Arthur. We saw a lot of downtown, but some of the places that you're serving specifically, we'll talk a little bit about the specific neighborhood that you're in, but we didn't see a whole lot of North Houston being hit. So tell us a little bit about kind of where the damage was and where you saw this initial need. And then we'll kind of talk about how it kind of rolled and,
you know, I think when I started this, I wanted to do community outreach because I was concerned about areas that were perhaps more poverty stricken, that already had issues prior to Harvey, and Harvey simply exacerbating those issues for them. And also my fear was that those areas might not get the same attention as other areas would.
Okay.
And I was correct.
Okay.
And so we just started, you know, with sandwiches because we knew people were hungry. So we would go with water and food and that sort of thing.
Just kind of immediate
needs.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And we started on a Sunday, and by that Friday I had enough volunteers to make 3,000 lunch sacks for people. And we had people, you know, going to Kingwood or going to the Fifth Ward, and then we found River Oaks in that process. So right now we're focusing on River Oaks and the Fifth Ward primarily.
Okay. For those of us, I know that we have different folks listening from around the area, so we're broadcasting out of Conroe, which is just north of that. So describe where River Oaks is in relation to where we currently are in Conroe.
Well, it's just south of Conroe. It's off of 242 and Needham Road.
Okay.
Right by Irons Middle School. So.
Okay. Yeah, and again, for those who may be listening outside of the greater Houston area, where we are located is about 45 minutes roughly north on a good traffic day,
right?
North of Houston, and then there's a series of small sort of townships, the largest of which is the Woodlands, and then Conroe is just north of that. So this would be just east of the Woodlands, or about 45 minutes due north of Houston. And so for those who are familiar with the area, you kind of think of Conroe and perhaps Woodlands as being a little more affluent. And so we don't sometimes always know just our neighbors, just to the outside of this sort of affluent bubble that we find ourselves in. So tell us a little bit about River Oaks and its demographics and kind of what's there for people who perhaps are unfamiliar with the neighborhood. And then we'll start talking about.
It's a primary Latinx community. It's certainly not in the same income bracket as the Woodlands or even Conroe. Not that everyone is completely poverty stricken on the street,
sure, right?
But it's not speaking, the same,
right?
There's a lot of Spanish speaking individuals, so there's a language barrier sometimes when we go out. Luckily, my trusty sidekick can speak Spanish. Most days, right. Some days it escapes her, but most days she can.
Okay.
But what we found was a community completely decimated.
Right.
It was gone. I mean, it was literally gone. Their homes were upside down or smashed into one another, and their belongings, every single thing they owned, was in front of these destroyed homes.
Okay.
And they were all just standing there in shock. You know, nobody really knew where to begin. And we realized at that point, maybe my bologna sandwiches were not exactly what was necessary.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that. We're going to take a short break here in just a few seconds. And then on the other side of that, we'll pick up on that thought, right? You had a certain desire to prepare just the basics, bologna sandwiches and water. And then you get there and you begin to observe, this is bigger.
Right.
And so we'll kind of pick it up from there as we come back from break. Again, you're listening to The Good News Show. I am Ted Cox, the host. You're listening on 104.5, 106.1, streaming live on irlonestar.com. And we'll be right back with Christine and Sierra right after the break to talk a little bit more about the needs then and the needs now. Talk to you on the other side of the break.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out ourlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776 with your questions. Get seen on TV, YouTube, and heard on our podcast, FM, and internet radio. Support your local radio station with Lone Star Community Radio.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to the Good News program, our little break from the week to celebrate just really extraordinary people doing good things in the community that you might not ever hear about. We have talked often that the show's conception was, even though we are bombarded 24/7 with just bad news and we're at each other's throats, there are folks like Christine and Sierra who are in our neighborhoods who would never on their own come forward and say the things that they're doing. And so I thank them for coming in. And this is not a matter of promoting ourselves, but rather stating a need that we saw to help people. And then also we'll talk a little bit more about the existing need that is within the community and what we can do to help. Because my understanding is, in communicating with a couple of folks that live there, is there's still tremendous need there. And the need can be seemingly overwhelming. So we'll pick it back up with Christine. She was talking about how she felt the need to give back to the community and prepared, really, this idea of preparing just a few lunches, a few meals, and then with the help of some friends, constructed over 3,000 meals. But you begin to get there with your bologna sandwiches, as you've characterized them, right. And you realize, oh, no, right. There's much more here. So kind of pick that up on what you saw. You've talked a little bit about your motivation and what you prepared and how the friends and other members came along. So you get there and you go, oh, goodness, this is worse.
And so I'm originally from Indiana, and some of my folks from up there had seen that I was preparing these meals and that sort of thing, and they wanted me to set up a PayPal account so they could help donate because they felt comfortable doing that with me.
Okay.
And reluctantly, I did so, and it took off, as this whole thing has. And within a few days, we were buying an RV for somebody out there, a pop-up RV.
Oh, my goodness.
Because their child was ill with a blood disorder, and the fact that they were living in a potential, what was going to be a health crisis
right.
in a very short period of time
right.
was obviously terrifying. You find people literally sleeping under carports, in the beds of pickup trucks or in their front yard. So we, when we found them that day, immediately my mother and I, in tears, raced to Walmart and spent every penny that we possibly could on tents and sleeping bags and pillows. And I think every day the need changes. It goes from, okay, we've got something over their head
right
for tonight, but it's been 5 weeks and some of them are still out there in tents, to trying to get them into apartments, or it was getting them vegetables to cook with, or pots and pans to cook with, or propane. Every single day the need changes. Right.
Well, describe a little bit about that. Again, it's these are not images that we see or saw on the news. We saw the tremendous rescue images and homes that were flooded, but we didn't see a lot of people's homes being flooded like this and them living in tents and or cooking on camping stoves, I'm assuming. So, I mean, what?
Yeah, it's still going on right now.
Yeah.
In this neighborhood, the unique situation that they have was they didn't get flooded until 3:00 in the morning, the day after the bad part of Harvey was gone.
Okay.
It was when the dam was released on the San Jacinto.
Okay.
And they went from 3 feet of water to 16 in, was it less than a half an hour?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's what totally decimated this neighborhood. Luckily, most of the residents had time to evacuate, but
right.
with no warning, there was no kind of public service announcement. They were forecasting on doing it the next morning, not in the middle of the night.
Oh,
so
interesting.
It really blindsided this entire community. They weren't able to, really pack up their belongings and their sentimental pictures and baby stuff, and they weren't really able to prepare like some of the other neighborhoods were.
Okay.
So when it came in and the water went 30 minutes to get 16 feet, the water rescues were out there, were dire. The fluorescent orange marks on the trailers every day are a reminder of just how bad the neighborhood was. That show when they were doing the water evacuations, they would just spray paint a big circle with the date and stating, so that everyone else could identify that house had been evacuated. And that's,
okay.
And so when you drive down the street, that's your big reminder every day, was the water was this high. I was in a house yesterday doing some mold inspections, and this was the first time that people had returned to the house, and they didn't even know how high the water got. And we looked up, and the ceiling fan had completely fallen apart from the water getting all the way up to the ceiling fan, and they had big vaulted ceilings, so it had to be 16 feet up at least.
Right.
And so that's the common in this neighborhood. That's that's definitely the rule opposed to the exception, where it's kind of opposite of that in other communities. And that's what makes this entire community so heart-wrenching, and why we spend so much time sacrificing time with our families, and putting marriages on the rocks, and our relationships with our kids, because we see these people who are still experiencing severe PTSD. They've been traumatized. They're not able to, to make the decisions that you normally would, because they're absolutely terrified. A lot of them own their land, they own their trailer, and it's all they have. So when we come in and we recognize that it's a potential health problem to keep their kids in this area, to keep the elderly in this area, and we might have, which we do, we have apartments, we have furniture, we're able to now offer these people, a new home, be it temporary. That's if from 3 months to 6 months or however long their need is, they're still very reluctant to do that, because they don't want to leave the only place that they have, and that is theirs. Right. So it's created a very unique, difficult situation for not only them, but for even the people helping, because we present education and we try to, illustrate just how dire the situation is. Right. And then we'll go down and they're back in their houses having dinner. And even with the damage, even with the damage, they're still because they're just they don't. It's a part of denial. One of the stages of grief. They don't want to accept the fact that my house is completely destroyed, and until we get that big equipment in there to really do the demo work that needs to be done, we're going to keep having this issue, because they're still seeing the shell of their house and tying those memories to it. Now, and I know that if there are several hundred homes, the damage may vary from home to home. But what have you seen, or can you recount for us as an assessment? Is this major damage that we're talking about in a lot of the homes? For example, will the whole home have to be demolished and then rebuilt, or is this a repair issue? So on the main street that we've been focusing on, it's actually it's zoned as unincorporated Montgomery County, and their water source comes out of the city or township of Woodlock. So it's kind of a no man's land when it comes to trash pickup, trash removal. And then there were some planning issues when the neighborhood was initially plotted out. So those are issues that were happening long before we got there, but were exacerbated by the hurricane. So for the most part, the very front of this street, maybe a quarter mile in, is not major damage. They're going to need some mold remediation, some spraying, but then after that point, it's almost total devastation. Wow. The houses the entire back of the street, it's gone. And so in the street, what we're talking about, if you're just joining us, is River Oaks, correct? Right, which is part of Montgomery County, just south of where we're broadcasting from. And is it almost due east? Would you characterize from the Woodlands on the other side of 45? Yes. So within our immediate listening area, how many would you estimate folks, families? Let's characterize it that way. How many families do you think have been affected
in this
On
way?
this street alone, there's 170 adults that have been affected and
170.
83 children.
Okay. And just one street.
And that's
correct.
just the
Just this one street.
So they're on. So
and-
they're on that edge, like I mentioned.
Yes.
So the street right behind them
Right.
is a more affluent community. So the
okay.
trash haul off, there's still been issues with that community, but as far as government aid and other agencies,
Right.
this street is no man's land. Nobody really wants to get out there.
It took a lot of pressure.
It took a lot of pressure and shining the light back on some of the county officials to
Okay.
get trash haul off started, and to get
So just the
Cross out there.
basics. Just the now
Correct.
some of the houses which we've already talked about are total losses. So the basic services that would come into it, whether it's water or power or gas, you couldn't get those services back
Correct.
up and running, right?
Correct, yes.
And
We still have
some
a-
of the stories that I've heard. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
We still have a house on the end of the street that doesn't have electricity.
Nothing.
Because of the way the storm took the utility pole underneath their home.
Okay.
It created a sinkhole, and now that trailer is sitting on top of that utility pole. There's no way to get
Oh my goodness.
any lights there. So they're still cooking by campfire.
there's
And some of
houses-
we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago who was a photojournalist and took some pictures in that general area. It may have been on that street. He didn't mention it if it was. And there were a couple of kids that were just almost eaten alive, it appears, by mosquitoes.
Yes.
And so there are a number of things that we would take for granted, like mosquitoes and mosquito
Or
repellents.
snakes or
Or
rats
snakes,
and all
yeah.
of the things that are crawling around right next to where they're sleeping.
Yeah. And so, some of the other images he captured was that some of the families are still, even as we've already talked about, even today in tents or trailers or things that. So we will need to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. We have one more segment that we'll talk to them. And when we come back, maybe we'll talk a little bit about what you're seeing. And you may not have all of the answers because, again, as you've already talked, you're volunteers and you're just individuals and you're doing a tremendous job and it's very heartwarming. But, how can we help these? What would you say that we can do as a public to help them? So when we come back from break, we'll talk a little bit about the needs that are still existing. You are listening to the Good News program with Ted Cox. We'll be talking with you on the other side of the break.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
Welcome back to the Good News program. You're listening here on 104.5, 106.1. We're broadcasting out of Conroe. You may also be listening to us on irlonestar.com, streaming live or through one of our apps. So if you're driving down 45 or in one of the general areas and you want to hear the conclusion, you can certainly hop online and stream us live. In studio, we have Christine and Sierra. We are talking specifically about an area that has perhaps been largely forgotten or at least overlooked in the damage and the needs. And they are a couple of volunteers who were gracious enough to come in and talk a little bit about the area and then the needs. So again, in studio, I have Christine and Sierra. We're talking specifically about the River Oaks subdivision or area. It's just east of the Woodlands on the other side of 45, on the east side of 45, and just south of Conroe, where we're broadcasting from. So we've been talking a lot about the need and both of your motivations about seeing a need in the community, preparing the sandwiches, getting there and realizing, oh my gosh, this is significantly bigger. Sandwiches are great.
Right.
Water is wonderful. The basics are great, but you saw a need. And then describe, if you could, and then I want to wrap up the time in just a few minutes with what you would like to have people do to help. But describe the first week rolls on, second week rolls on, and now we're into how many weeks after Harvey? Five or six weeks.
Almost 7.
So-
We're at the end of 6.
So if we were to drive into River Oaks, what would we see there?
It's significantly better than it
Okay.
was when we found it, but it was such a complete disaster when we found it that those are small shoes to fill. We still have trash that needs to be picked up. We still have people, as we said, living in tents. We still have a need for food on the street. Sierra, what can you add?
There's still a lot of demo work that needs to be done. Actually, a lot of demo work. You almost would get a false sense of completion when driving down River Oaks at this point.
Interesting. Okay.
Because you see a lot of the trash has been hauled off, and then you see the houses, but you don't see inside the houses. You don't see the mold has taken over the houses. You don't see that the support beams and the drywall's rotted and the floors rotted. You don't see the holes. So when you drive down, it doesn't look like just you're strolling down a neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't quite look as bad as it did because there's been so much, there's been trash cleanup.
Okay. And the roads are dry and the lawns are dry.
As long as it
Some
hasn't
days.
rained.
Yes. Yes. Of course, we just got rain the last couple of days.
And they had to have pump trucks out there pumping because the road gets impassable after about 30 minutes of a light sprinkle.
Do you know if this is common? Did this flooding happen prior to this? Because we talked about the major flooding and the release of the dam. So it's common that this area.
Well, just this one section of the road.
Okay.
But it does deem it. There's a pipe that was burst, and it just hasn't been repaired. But it did deem the rest of the. I mean, it's right at the front of the road, so anyone that was past that point would have to call off of work. Kids can't go to school, and that's been that way for at least 2 years.
Wow.
So that's just a factor of life in this community, which. For us living on the other side of 45 and living in different communities, we don't realize that kind of stuff is still going on with our neighbors.
Right.
And if you were to get down to the end of River Oaks, you would quite honestly think you're in a third world country.
Yes.
So in the stretch of one road, of one street, you go from relatively okay to disaster.
Devastation. Yeah.
Okay. So we were talking a little bit earlier that through some of your friends and family that don't live in this area, you've set up a couple of mechanisms for people to be able to give funding or donations. You mentioned while we were off air that a lot of the donations that have come in, you're out of storage room. Is that
Correct.
Did I hear you correctly? Okay. So what are some of the? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We've rented 2 storage facilities to keep up with donations that have come in for us.
Okay.
And as I said, we also make trips to the 5th Ward. So,
yes.
And their needs are different than River Oaks. Okay. So, we'll take one storage unit for, the 5th Ward and the other is for River Oaks. And so, and the community's been great in, responding to us when we put a call out, that I need diapers or I need water or I need bleach or I need furniture. They've been there.
And so how are you communicating? What through what?
Social media.
So it's just all social media?
Facebook can actually be a decent thing once in a while.
Okay, that was fine. Because it does seem that every once in a while when I'll get on Facebook, I get mad and shut it down. It's like, so social media. So we've focused almost all of our time on River Oaks. So tell us then about the 5th Ward. Tell us about what, certainly we saw a lot of that when we were going through Harvey and the immediate aftermath. So what's it like now? If you or I were to take a trip down, what would we see there? You said the needs are different.
Much the same.
Much the same. Okay.
It would resemble River Oaks a month ago.
Right. They're further
5th
behind.
Ward. I was just going to say 5th. So 5th Ward today is River Oaks a month ago.
Correct.
So are the people there in the 5th Ward? Are they moving back into their homes? Or
They
never left.
They never left. So the water didn't get quite as high.
Oh, it did.
Oh, it did. But once it receded, they were right back in their houses because they didn't have anywhere else to go.
Okay. And what are some of their needs? And then in the remaining few minutes, we'll talk about how can folks who are listening to us or coming onto our social media, which we'll mention in just a moment, how can they help? What's the needs and how can they help? So what are their needs in the Fifth Ward?
They need food that will actually sustain them, not just somebody driving through with one sandwich. They need sustainable food.
And are they able to prepare the food?
Some of them are, some of them are not.
Okay.
So, canned goods, that sort of thing.
They were amazingly receptive to MREs. Actually.
MREs were used.
They really were happy to see those boxes at MREs.
Because by the time they showed up at River Oaks, we were past that point, so we were actually able to use those to take to the Fifth Ward.
Okay. And are you still getting those now, the MREs and canned goods and so forth?
We are getting canned goods, but we don't have any access to MREs.
So we're past that immediate triage.
Right.
Okay.
And blankets, sleeping bags, pillows, tents.
Okay.
Help setting those up. That was something that we found out. That we're learning as we go with all of this. But one of the things that came up after we had people set up in River Oaks was that there are very specific ways to set up a tent when you're in a disaster area, when you're surrounded by debris and rubble. There's very specific ways to line out tarps so that the tent is actually keeping you safe and sealed away from the toxins and things that you would normally be exposed to.
Okay.
So that's another thing that definitely, as tents go down to the Fifth Ward, getting that education across to them is going to be really important as well.
Okay. So at this point, as you're beginning to look into the sort of immediate future, which I would imagine is probably pretty hard to look beyond 24 or 48 or 72 hours.
That's correct.
So looking into the immediate future, let's just say as we work our way into the weekend, it seems like you still have these two efforts going on. You have the Fifth Ward, which is predominantly canned goods and characterize it non-perishable food.
Right.
Blankets, tents are still a need for that area.
Cots, sleeping bags.
What about baby needs?
We definitely can use size 5 and 6 diapers all day long.
Okay.
And a Similac formula. I have a huge call for that when we get down there. Baby food.
Okay. So if I'm sitting there and I'm listening to you, and I go, okay, I can't. First of all, I can't believe this is still going on. That's A. B. I still want to help. I have canned goods or can get canned goods or tents or blankets or formula or size 5 and 6 diapers. How would they then go about? Let's just sort of separate the two since the two needs. So for the Fifth Ward, for the items that you have here, do you have a place that somebody can go online to say, here's a list of things that we need?
Well, we've been doing that through Facebook, and I've been using our community Facebook page through Alden Bridge.
Okay.
And that's usually, how I do a shout out, but certainly they could contact me through Facebook or Sierra.
Okay.
My friend Marie Funk, they could contact her as well. Becca Glenn, those are some of the girls that have been working with us to try to corral donations as we get inundated with them. So.
All right. And for those of us, or for those of you who are listening either online or streaming it online or on 104.5, 106.1 on our FM broadcast, I will post the information, both the list as well as contact information on my Facebook page. So you can go to Facebook, look up at Good News Program. And I will have the contact information for them. So again, it's you can go to Facebook page at Good News Program, and I will have both the contact information they leave with me at the end of the program, as well as at least a partial list, and I'll ask that you check back on it from time to time to make sure, because those needs shift from almost day to day, or at least a couple of days to a couple of days. So what we'll do is we'll go to our final break before the top of the hour, and we'll come back and we'll spend the last couple of minutes talking about River Oaks, because we mentioned PayPal and donations and heavy demo equipment. So we'll kind of end up on that so that people know that we have really two efforts going on and how they can participate and support your effort in making sure that these folks who desperately still need care get the care and just the basic human comforts of food and a bed and a cot and clean diapers that these fellow neighbors of ours, regardless of color or religious adherent, that we comfort our fellow neighbor. So we'll be right back in a couple of minutes, and we'll finish up our conversation with Christine and Sierra. You're listening to the Good News program on Lone Star Community Radio.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Well, welcome back to the Good News program. I am Ted Cox. I'm your host for these couple of hours. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate my guest. As a reminder, Jimmy Edwards was in the first hour, and we thank him so much for his service to the country, both as a Marine in Vietnam, as well as honoring all of those who have served in the Montgomery County Veterans Memorial Commission. And I want to especially thank a couple of folks that are here now, Christine and Sierra, who were kind of thrown into this. And so with much angst and trepidation, they have done a fantastic job with making known potentially a problem that even in just neighborhoods in Conroe and Woodlands that we either don't know about or have forgotten about because our lives have returned to something that resembles normal. But just in our immediate neighborhood, just miles away, a couple of miles away, after Harvey, life has not yet returned to normal and perhaps won't return to normal for some time. So Christine and Sierra, thank you so much for jumping into the fire. You've done a fantastic job with sounding the alarm that there's still neighbors of ours who need help. So let's just remind our listeners, I will post on the Good News Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook and you search at Good News Program, you will have some contact information at the close of the show, as well as a list. And so you'll see two lists of two needs that are being served by Christine and Sierra. One is the 5th Ward, which is primarily a basic needs, canned goods, blankets, cots, tents, diapers, formula, and so forth. And we'll have that list. But let's, with just a couple of minutes that we have left, let's turn our attention back to River Oaks in our closing minutes and describe to us again, just as a reminder to the listeners, kind of what the need is and the mechanism, the channel through which you're going to collect that need and distribute that need. And we mentioned a PayPal account, which we'll link to, but just kind of refresh what River Oaks.
I think that our biggest concern with River Oaks is that this was an ongoing problem before Harvey.
Okay.
And some of these folks have flooded for the 3rd time since 94.
Right.
And they are afraid to leave because they own the land. They don't have the finances to go someplace else.
Okay.
They are being denied FEMA because this is the 3rd time they've been flooded. So
interesting.
Now they've lost literally everything, and all they have is that piece of property.
Okay.
And so
now, does the property at this point have any value?
We're still waiting on the county.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't want to ask you a question that's perhaps difficult for you to answer.
It is, and in such a special flood zone,
right.
And with these new storms that we're getting and the ferocity
we don't know what the new
of them,
floodplain is going to be.
We don't know what the county is going to end up determining as far as these.
Okay, so that's still in the process of being determined.
When they bought them years ago, they were sold to them at a much higher price than they were actually worth.
Oh, okay.
So we don't know what that's going to manifest as time goes on.
Right.
Okay. Well, and we mentioned on the off air, so it'd be good for us to sort of remind our listeners who may have heard a couple of weeks ago, we had a group on Lone Star Legal Aid. Mm-hmm. It is an organization that helps pro bono work for legal. Mm-hmm. So if we have any listeners within the River Oaks area who may think that they need legal help, you certainly also can go on to our Facebook page, and we should communicate this in an offline manner as well, that the Lone Star Legal Aid Group perhaps could help, or at least begin the filings if they have not done so already with FEMA. So, so again, let's talk a little bit about River Oaks as we kind of.
So I think that our long-term goal, obviously, is to try to get those people off of the street who want off of the street permanently.
Okay. And by off that street, off that River Oaks.
Completely off of River Oaks,
okay,
so that this does not happen to them again.
Okay.
There are people who want to stay, and that's certainly their prerogative. We're not trying to force anyone out.
Sure.
And there are people who are beginning to rebuild. I don't know that that's a great idea, but
okay,
I understand.
Sure.
But there are also people who we've spoken with who, given the opportunity to go with some assistance, want to do that. So our goal is to try to get them out of the situation, and that obviously takes funds. We want to buy land. We want, we're still working out the logistics.
Bigger
this is a huge
project that you have in mind.
Correct.
So who would have known that a couple of bologna sandwiches would turn into this? Huh?
I've often said, while I was busy making bologna sandwiches, this thing went crazy. I don't know what happened. So
okay, well, tell us some of the organization. How are you beginning to accumulate donations and funds and those kind of things?
Well, we're very tight with our pocketbooks.
Okay.
Right.
We don't. We're still very, very leery to dig into our funds for anything because we're.
And these are
looking at the
donations
bigger
that have been given to you thus far.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we're trying to stay focused on that bigger picture, and utilize the community for the immediate needs, so that we can, hopefully get enough money to actually relocate these people and get them into some land.
But you have a fund set up.
We do.
Okay. And is it a single fund or is it multiple? So it's a single fund.
It is. And then I have another person who had been collecting for a while, who is going to turn that over to me when we finally, come up with a logistical, solid plan that will help house some.
And is this an established or soon to be established nonprofit?
We have 501(c)(3) stuff that we're working on right now to get.
Okay. So it's in the process. So if people coming in the very near future want to continue to contribute, it will soon be under a nonprofit, and we can link to that as it's established as well.
Absolutely.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Is that okay? But is it premature then to talk about how they may be able to give in the meantime? If somebody wants to donate through PayPal, is that something we can link to?
Absolutely. You can absolutely link to that
absolutely.
for sure. Yeah. I'm not going to turn down free money.
Okay. No. Okay. Well, we will let's wrap up here for just a couple of minutes, just to remind people what we've heard. So we've been through Harvey. Harvey came on, it stayed, it flooded. A lot of the flooding abated. The major media left, and there's a seeming sense of normalcy that yet still doesn't exist for several communities. The communities we've been talking about with Sierra and Christine are the River Oaks area, which of course is just south of us, where we're broadcasting out of Conroe, just east of the Woodlands. There is some needs that are now beyond perhaps just the basics, but we're looking at a much larger project. So as we get further information, we will link to it on our Facebook page. So I want to thank Sierra and Christine for coming in and being sort of baptized by fire. You guys did a great job. For those who are listening, again, you're either listening to us on 104.5 or 106.1, or streaming live on irlonestar.com. As a final reminder, you can get all of the information that we've talked about on our Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and you search for @Good News Program, within the next couple of hours at the most, I will have links and lists of ways that you can donate, both hard goods like canned goods and diapers and tents and things, as well as money that will go towards the relocation. You've been listening to the Good News Program. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 1. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for checking out this podcast of Lone Star Community Radio, Montgomery County's community radio station. If you enjoyed this recording, make sure to check out our past shows online at irlonestar.com or their respective video or podcast formats on YouTube, Google Play, or iTunes. If you have any questions regarding the show, either it being about sponsorships or questions for the host, contact the station manager at dick@irlonestar.com or call the station at 936-647-3776. This show is recorded in downtown Conroe, Texas at the Lone Star Community Radio Studios, and Lone Star Community Radio reserves all rights to this recording and images.